Why hasn't AMD come out with a chip that's akin to the consoles that has performance, kind of like similar to them, because the closest APU we have is like a third or a quarter of the performance of a console. Why hasn't AMD done that? Strix Halo. This is AMD's newest and upcoming APU. And basically this is AMD's swan song to all the mobile gamers out there that just want good performance in a mobile form factor without all the power and all the hassle of a discrete GPU. And one that's actually going to deliver desktop graphics level performance, all in a small form factor in a single package. This is going to be one of AMD's most just innovative product, and I think a long time. RDNA 2 was very exciting. They were challenging NVIDIA in the high end. Other than that, I can't think of any other product AMD has came out with that has been this exciting in a little while. Strix Halo is going to get to a level of performance with, integrated GPU that we have not seen before. I wanted to preface this discussion with disclosing that many of the Strix Halo leaks have come from Moore's Law is Dead. He is a YouTuber. If you're watching my channel, you're probably aware of Moore's Law is Dead. In my opinion, his credibility recently has been, not the best, not the highest standard. He was definitely wrong about Zen 5 performance. 14th gen performance he was wrong about. For example, he released this video 2 years ago, and it's actually his first leak of Zen 4, at least is the first leak I'm aware of. He was talking about uplifts of up to 40%, even though he wasn't very confident about this. And he was saying kind of like Zen 5 was going to be more exciting than Zen 4, and think of Zen 4 to Zen 5 as analogous to Zen 2. Like it was going to be some like huge uplift that you had to upgrade. Now, I'll give him credit, that was 2 years ago, but more recently, recent as 4 months ago, he was talking about low ball for Zen 5 IPC is 20. And now AMD said it's 16%. In reality, it seems to be close to 0 or 3%. So take that as you will. Many of the leaks today are coming from Moore's Law is Dead. I have found some leaks and documents that may be coming from internally from AMD, but yeah, it's not very clear whether these will be the real specs or not. Okay, but let's get into the actual specs for Strix Halo. I've got a cold here. I've got a cold, so I'm gonna need to take some Nyquil. I'm feeling pretty bad, but I wanted to get a video out to you guys. Down the hatch. That's Nyquil there, so hopefully I don't fall asleep during this video. The things I do for my 162 subscribers that I have at the time of filming this video. Okay, Strix Halo. It is a Zen 5 chiplet design. As you guys know, I don't like chiplets, but this Strix Halo, I think if you're gonna do triplet, this is a good way to do it, because we have the graphics die separated from the core chiplets, and that way you can actually increase the amount of GPU cores on this system. Previously, from my understanding, all other APUs made by AMD have been monolithic due to the latency and bandwidth constraints of a chiplet design, and graphics are very sensitive to both of those things. Now, it seems like they're going to make this one work with Infinity Cache, and as you can see by this mock-up here, those chiplets are very, very close together, and that is needed for a graphics-centered chip. So we're gonna have a Zen 5 chiplet design, 16 cores, that's 2 chiplets of 8 cores each, 64 megabytes of L3 cache, and this is the really cool part, 40 RDNA 3.5 compute units. Now, I don't know what that 0.5 exactly is going to mean for performance, but RDNA 3 had a very, very small IPC increase over RDNA 2. I've seen testing with the RX 7600, and it seems to only be less than 5%. So It's really just RDNA 2 compute unit performance here. Also, we're gonna have 32 megabytes of infinity cache on that GPU. Also something else very interesting, 256-bit bus. And this is with LPDDR5X memory running at 8,000 speed. This is interesting to me because I don't know of, I could be wrong here, but I don't know of any other parts that use a 256-bit bus with just standard like DDR5. I know it's low profile, but like DDR5, I thought those had to be in the 64-bit configuration. Let me know in the comments if I'm wrong. Now I know Apple might use this kind of RAM with their chips, and I know that they have bigger bus widths, so it's possible, I guess. I didn't know that. They should have done this a long time ago. They should have gave us a APU with a 256-bit bus and RDNA 2 during COVID. That would have sold like crazy, like gangbusters. But hey, we'll take it now. It's gonna be fine. Interestingly, XDNA 2 engine, and that has 60 AI tops, trillions of operations a second. So, you know, Lunar Lake's gonna have 40 in the NPU, so this is gonna be like 50% more than that. So looking good. Now this is the downside. We have all these cores, all this cache, and all these, all this RAM. So we're looking at a platform power of up to even 130 watts. And yeah, that is going to be a lot, and especially in the mobile form factor. I'd like to see much less wattage than that on my chip when I'm carrying it mobile. I can't talk anymore. Man. But yeah, I've even seen, we'll get into this later, but I've seen overclocks with this even going up to like 160, 170. And for that, I think that you're missing the point with the APU design. APU design, you know, you're keeping all the data central to the CPU and the graphics cores right there when they're right by each other, so you should use less power if you have an APU. If you're consuming close to 200 watts with the APU, you're doing something wrong in the mobile form factor. I know this is all about performance, but I'd like to see this drop down a little bit, and I'd sacrifice a little bit of performance to get more efficient chip on the go personally. There is also a monolithic design that's going to have 8 cores. It's going to have only 8 compute units, similar NPU, but a much lower wattage. And maybe that product's for me. Personally though, like that's way less cores. That's like akin to what we have now. I want something with a lot of GPU cores. You can even give me only 6 CPU cores. I don't need a lot of CPU power. I just need a lot of those GPU cores to get gaming. So yeah, I'd like to see at least like 30 compute units on this one and it be monolithic. That would be amazing. But, you know, I can only dream. We're going to have 2 core chiplet dies and SoC die. And this SoC die, it houses the IO and the graphics and then everything else. And it's actually packaged with TSMC CoWoS. At least it is. It is alleged. So it's a little bit more advanced. In fact, I think that's the same packaging technology AMD uses on their 7900 XTX GPU. Seen different leakers on Twitter giving us some more data here. It apparently is going to have DisplayPort 2.1 with ultra high bitrate 10 for those that care for this. Maybe you could put this in a mini PC and drive some displays at really high refresh rate if you want to do that, or at an 8K display if you wanted to at a high refresh rate. The LPDDR5X is going to be soldered on this one, and it's going to be very close to the graphics here. And hey, that makes sense, right? I mean, you're going to want low latency. I'm okay with sacrificing upgradability if it means performance and efficiency. If I don't get those two things, then I'm going to be kind of upset. But this is a mobile form factor. You get what you get here. It's okay, in my opinion. Yeah, this wouldn't work on regular motherboards because they don't have the memory bit, but they don't have the right bus width for the RAM. So this won't be available in solo purchase for enthusiasts here. This article kind of detailed the CPU performance of these. This is a little bit of nothing burger to me. We already know Zen 5 CPU performance, and it's pretty much Zen 4. We also have alleged TDPs for these. Oh, and the lower end parts like are 128-bit. That's interesting. We'll talk about the significance of the bus width and the memory bandwidth in a moment, because I think it is highly significant for this product. Okay, this is super interesting here. We have people already allegedly testing Strix Halo and giving us synthetic graphics performance for this chip. So we, you probably can't read this. It's really small, super small, and it's blurry. Who did I get this from? I got this from this guy. I don't know his name, but you can go find this post on Twitter or on X if you want. But hey, this is what he posted. RTX 4060 mobile at 110 watts. We're getting about 10K in 3D Mark Time Spy. And these parts are already out, these RTX cards. RTX 4070 mobile, 140 watts. We're getting about 13.5K. And then we're getting that, apparently there's a 32 core GPU of Strix Halo. That's 110 watts. And that's going to be close to 10,500. So that's right there at the RTX 4060 mobile, interestingly. And then the GigaChad Strix Halo top end chip that we've been talking about, 40 compute units, 140 watts, and that is at 13,000, right under the RTX 4070 mobile. It's kind of in between the 4060 mobile and RTX 4070 mobile. Now keep in mind, these are laptop chips. They're performing a lot worse than the desktop counterparts, but still, for an APU integrated graphics solution, this is insane, and I'm excited about it. This is a product AMD is making. I would say it's like a swan song to mobile gamers. AMD's finally making a product that people really want. And people are going to be mad at me in the comment section for saying this, but in my opinion, AMD charging the prices they have for a chiplet-based design, it's not very appealing to me. It's not competitive, but this, depending on how they segment it and price it, could be very, very compelling for mobile gamers. So we already have some devious articles about Strix Halo, ones that already kind of are misinformation here. But okay, this one maybe not, but it's misleading you in the wrong direction here. So AMD's next gaming laptop CPUs contain a GPU larger than the RTX 4070. Basically, it's saying here the graphics chip die is more silicon than the RTX 4070 desktop die. And that's true. I mean, I think, let's see, yeah, it kind of shows dimensions here. The RTX 4070 die is 294 millimeters squared, and the Strix Halo GPU die, where really it's an SoC die, and that's what I wanted to get into, is 307 millimeters squared. So, hey, Strix Halo's bigger. It's built on 4 nanometers, so is the RTX 4070. A lot of you are probably thinking it should perform better than a desktop 4070. No, that's not the case, man. And the reason is, like we just talked about, that SoC die, it not only has those graphics card chiplets, but it's going to have I/O in there, memory controllers, cache, all the sort of things that you need to have a PC to function. PCIe lanes, all these things. Don't get me wrong, the RTX 4070 is going to have this as well, but I don't think it's going to be as much to the extent as like a whole, because this is housing the I/O for the CPUs and the I/O for the GPUs and the whole system. So it's not going to be as much of that stuff on the RTX 4070. Also, we're going to have less memory bandwidth in the system, and we're going to have less TDP to work with. Okay, I wanted to compare desktop graphics cards in the RDNA architecture to Strix Halo to kind of get an idea of what its performance may be. Now, we have the 6650 XT here, and I wanted to point this out that RDNA 3 really doesn't have any more performance per CU than RDNA 2. This graphics card has 32 compute units. Where is it? 32 compute units. And it performs the same as the RX 7600. It also has 280 gigs of memory bandwidth. It also has 32 compute units, which is right here, and 288 gigabytes of memory bandwidth. Now I know that these graphics cards are built on 6 nanometer and Strix Halo will be built on 4 nanometer, but in general, I think that this difference in node will actually be used for power efficiency and they won't really push the architecture too hard for performance. The TDP of this card is 165 watts, and the 6650 XT is 176 watts. So I think that they're just going to be making it more power efficient, these 40 compute units. It is also important to note that RDNA compute units don't scale linearly. For example, the 6700 XT has 40 compute units, and the 6650 has 32, but the RX 7600 XT is only 14% faster. By my math, it should be somewhere in like 25% faster or so, based on the compute unit. So compute units don't scale linearly, and that is due to many things, but bandwidth is a huge reason why they can't scale linearly. So what about memory bandwidth? How much memory bandwidth will Strix Halo actually have? And I've been hinting at this, that I think it's going to kind of nerf performance with Strix Halo. Well, on Reddit, of all places, I have someone that's claiming to know how much bandwidth Strix Halo will have. I don't know how he came to this conclusion. I don't know how to do the math for bandwidth with a 256-bit bus on DDR, like a DDR platform. I know on graphics cards, all you have to do is divide the bus width by 8 and then multiply it by the bandwidth of the VRAM. Now, it doesn't work the same way with DDR type memory, and I would know how to do this if it was in a 64-bit channel, but it's not. The balance, the OP on this post, which I will link in the description, has said that Strix Halo will be quad channel, opposed to the dual channel Phoenix, which only had 120 gigabytes of memory bandwidth, and will therefore be 240 gigabytes per second at the minimum. And he's saying even if they push the RAM to 8,533, they can push the bandwidth to 270 gigabytes per second if they want. Now that is concerning to me, because if you look at a GPU with similar amount of core count, such as the 6700 XT, it has 384 gigabytes of memory bandwidth. So that's quite a bit more than the 240 or whatever we said earlier. And I think that lower bandwidth is going to constrain those cores, because RDNA 2 was already kind of bandwidth constrained slightly compared to Ampere. And that mostly showed up at 4K within its benchmarks. I know we're going to have Infinity Cache here, and that will make up for some of the bandwidth, but it's not really a universal fix for not having the memory bandwidth. Honestly, we're looking at closer, like max overclock to like the 6650 XT. Like if you overclock that DDR RAM like really quick, then you get close to this, and this has 8 less compute units. So maybe it's going to be a non-issue if the compute units are clock slow and you keep it tuned for efficiency, but that is something to consider for sure. Now I wanted to take a look at the RTX 4060 mobile performance, because this was in the ballpark of where Strix Halo is going to be. And if we're looking, it is close to the RX 6600, the desktop version. And that makes sense, because like we were talking about earlier, this GPU has a memory bandwidth very close to what we are looking at in Strix Halo. I know memory bandwidth isn't everything, but 40 compute units will surely be constricted by only 220, 240 gigabytes per second of memory bandwidth. What about the 4070 mobile? That is equal to about a 3060. So the RTX 3060 also has about 12 teraflops, and the RX 6600 has about 9 teraflops. Teraflops are important here because they don't always equal performance. I wanted to detail the AMD Radeon 780M. This was the newest APU AMD had designed up to my knowledge, but they had actually come out with the 890M, which we'll talk about in a moment. The 780M is about equal to the 1650 desktop card. It's not very fast, but hey, it's an APU, so that's pretty impressive. It has 8 teraflops and a memory bandwidth of, it's not on here. Interesting. And the AMD Radeon 890M, and this has 16 compute units, and it has 12 teraflops. Now you might just kind of like assume like, oh, it has 16 compute units, just double that, and that's the performance you'll get of Strix Halo. But not quite. The 780M has 12 compute units, okay? And as we said, it's equal to a 1650. And the 1660, which is the 890M, is equal to is 50% faster. We take the 16 compute units. Let me get the calculator. 16 compute units divided by 12, and that's 33% faster. So why is it 50% faster? These APUs are all over the place, man. All over the place. It's really hard to estimate their performance, and that's due to the memory bandwidth. The memory bandwidth on the 890M is much higher than the 780M. Well, how are we going to estimate the performance of Strix Halo? I mean, the benchmarks say it's between an RTX 4070 mobile and RTX 4060 mobile. And based on the benchmarks and what we're seeing from these other graphics cards with, you know, similar memory bandwidth, and it seems like they'll be consuming a little bit more power, but hey, we're on you know, more advanced nodes, so we'll probably have that node advantage and consume less power. Well, I think around RX 6600 is kind of right. I would even go with the RX 5700 XT here. It's 40 compute units and similar 256-bit bus would be around the performance we'd be getting out of Strix Halo. It comes right in the middle of the 3060 and the RX 6600, and those are the two graphics cards the 4070 mobile and the 4060 mobile are equal to. So it's in between those two performance, and it sounds right to me. I mean, the RX 6600 has a similar memory bandwidth and similar compute unit architecture. And with it being bandwidth constrained and power constrained, I think that, yeah, it'd perform around here. It has more compute units, so it's going to output a little bit more than the RX 6600. So I think the RX 5700 XT would be a good baseline for Strix Halo. Now, luckily, Hardware Unboxed recently did a video with the RX 5700 XT, and they're reevaluating it based on its, you know, affordability and kind of its competence in modern games. And it's holding up pretty well. Here at Plague Tale Requiem 1080p ultra quality, it's getting 64 FPS, not bad. Cyberpunk high quality, 1080p above 60 FPS. Spider-Man Remastered, 1080p very high, 126 FPS. You know, Horizon Forbidden West, 1440p, around 63 FPS. Not bad at all. Now, I think you'd have to lower the performance a little bit when you're playing at higher resolution and higher textures, just because that memory bandwidth won't be as high. But for an APU, Strix Halo is looking very impressive. RX 5700 XT is where we could be getting with this thing. Max overclock, max tilt, like 160 watts, like SoC power. We could be getting that with Strix Halo. Now, in such a small area, I wouldn't want it to consume 170 watts. Even if I got that amazing performance, I'd rather dial it down to 100 watts and get, you know, like 70% of the performance, or maybe 60. But I know there's going to be people that want to get max tilt. And hey, I get that. In mini PCs, this is going to be a godsend. In laptops, this will be pretty cool, but I think, you know, NVIDIA is still going to have them beat with discrete GPUs consuming similar power. Now, if you tune this thing way down, it's going to just be great, in my opinion. This is really, genuinely one of the coolest products AMD will be launching in forever. Like, this is AMD can really use this to compete in a way that no one else can. Like, Arc just isn't there yet to get this loud performance in mobile. Maybe we'll get there in a couple years, but Strix Halo is the bee's knees. It is it. You know, when it comes out, if it's anywhere near RTX or RX 5700 XT, pick it up for sure. I can hear you saying, there ain't no way, like, you're so dumb, Silicon Steak. There ain't no way that a mobile APU is going to get RX 5700 XT performance. That's just too much. Even max overclock, there ain't no way. I gotcha. You know, I can see where you're coming from. Let's pull up the chart here. RTX 4060 mobile, which was the low end, it's really only 8% faster than that low end estimate. But I can see what you're saying. What if it bottom frags? What if we use way less power and, you know, the memory bandwidth constrains it? I think at the very minimum, I think it'd be performing like a 1080. And this is going to be slower than the RTX 4060 mobile. But hey, even with 1080 discrete desktop performance, I think this is great. This is a flagship from 2016. So hey, that's reasonable. It's been 8 years. I don't think that's too out of the ordinary. So, but keep in mind, this is going to have an NPU that's very powerful. So it's going to have AI functionality. It's going to have ray tracing cores, not that you would want to use them on this performance. And you know, there's going to be interesting things about Strix Halo. So don't count it out yet. I think Strix Halo will be one of AMD's coolest products in years. And if they can keep going with this APU madness, then they're going to put NVIDIA and Intel in a lot of trouble. What do you guys think about Strix Halo? Did I get this way wrong? Do I not know what I'm talking about? Let me know.
So tune in, don't hesitate. Subscribe now, don't be late. With Silicon State, the truth's in sight. Tech shining star blazing bright.